Forget the love letters. North Korea is sending a new message to the U.S. in the form of two new short-range ballistic missiles. North Korea launched them off their eastern coast. The first missile traveled about 265 miles, the second about 428. This is according to South Korea. And this was just last month that President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un met on friendly terms at the DMZ, and they later agreed to renew denuclearization talks. This missile launch threatening that effort. We have former Director of National Intelligence and CNN National Security Analyst General James Clapper here with us. So when you're looking at the calculus of North Korea, why would they launch these?
Well, this is actually fairly typical of North Korea. When they feel they're being neglected and people aren't paying attention to them, they want to do something that'll attract that attention. And I think this is just kind of another manifestation of that. I don't think it's some great leap technologically for the North Koreans, but I think the important thing here was the signaling that, hey, don't forget me here in North Korea.
And so what do they want out of that? Just some attention, more attention to a potential discussion?
Exactly. And I think it's a reflection of, well, a couple things. They may have been messaging because of some forthcoming exercises between the U.S. and the South Korean military, or they don't feel there's enough progress being made towards relieving them of sanctions in negotiations. So it'd be just messaging. It kind of reminds me of my grandkids when they were young and they, sit in their high chair and beat on the tray with a spoon just to get attention.
I was going to say, you do seem to be describing a toddler. I want to talk about Saudi Arabia now, because President Trump has vetoed 3 joint resolutions that prohibit arms sales to Saudi Arabia. Many lawmakers are worried that these are weapons that are going to be used in Saudi Arabia's war on Yemen. If that's the case, would this make, in your belief, the U.S. complicit in these mass atrocities that we've seen?
Well, this has been an issue since when I served as DNI, and that is the Saudis' utilization of U.S. weapon systems and the supporting apparatus like tankers for their war in Yemen. And they've had issues from the get-go with perhaps I'll call it careless targeting, and this has resulted in a lot of casualties, civilian casualties, and probably unnecessarily so. So yeah, implicitly at least, yeah, we're complicit when we aid and abet that.
The chairman of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, Eliot Engel, he says the president's veto sends, quote, a grim message that America's foreign policy is no longer rooted in our core values. Of course, when you look, and from your time, the U.S. relationship with Saudi Arabia is so complicated because Saudi Arabia, there's this interest for the U.S. having this alliance with Saudi Arabia, and yet they have done, as we have seen recently and even before that, very bad things. So what is there for the Trump administration to navigate right now on this?
Well,
how should they be navigating it?
That's a great question. I personally still bothered by giving them a pass on the murder of Khashoggi. I think that was really a terrible message to the world about where our values are. The president is much more interested in the business aspects. He thinks they're going to make fantastic profits by selling the Saudis arms. So it's all about the money rather than what have been our traditional values. So I think the congressman's got a point.
I want to talk about Robert Mueller's testimony on the Hill yesterday, the former special counsel. You know him. You've worked professionally with him in past years, right, very often. He did not have the command of the contents of the report that I think universally people were expecting him to have. What did you make of that? Well,
Brianna, somebody who's just south of 80 years old myself, and I'm a little older than Bob Mueller, actually, and also someone who, like him, doesn't like to testify. So I'm a little reluctant to be critical. I think he's operating under tremendous pressure. I think his role as the special prosecutor was more of a CEO, where he oversaw the operations, but did not engage directly in, say, interrogating witnesses or actually writing the report. And I think the notion of having an encyclopedic photographic memory level of fluency in the terms of the detail, the 448 pages was a bit much anyway. So I think he did pretty well. He made some points that I think needed to be made, and I think he brought life to the report by virtue of the fact that he was appearing live on television and people could watch that. And I do think he did make some points. I thought it might have been better had the House Intelligence Committee session gone first, which dealt with the Russian interference, which I think is something he is both passionate about and knows about more. And it did seem as though he warmed up as the day wore on. But as I say, I'm sympathetic.
But you think that he had probably made more personal. I mean, we know listening to Mueller that his main concern here is what Russia has done because what Russia continues to do. And that was the alarm that he sounded yesterday. He said that Russia is currently meddling in the 2020 race. Do you think that we're going to see a repeat of 2016?
Absolutely. And I was very glad he made that point in the manner in which he did. That was one of the, on Bob Mueller's passion scale, that was pretty passionate about the Russian interference. And I've been harping on that from the get-go since I left the government, about the profound threat Russia poses to our basic system. And given the magnitude of their interference in the 26th election, which eclipsed anything in our history. Sure, they've interfered before, but not on the scale they did. They're going to continue to do it. As Director Wray pointed out appropriately and correctly, what we've done so far has not thwarted them. And so I think it's a real concern that all Americans ought to have for the 2020 election.
What do you make then of the way Republicans on the Hill are handling election security?
I'm very disappointed in the thwarting of this bill, which is designed to enhance election security. And apparently it's more important not to incur the wrath of the president than it is to secure our election apparatus. And this, is characteristic of the president. When we briefed him in January of 2017 on the intelligence community assessment about the Russian meddling, skepticism then, because acknowledging the Russian interference casts doubt on the legitimacy of his election. And that theme continues yet today. And it's regrettable because the bigger issue here is the threat to our system.
And that was certainly what Robert Mueller was hammering home yesterday. He also seemed concerned that dirt from foreign entities or countries is going to become the new normal. Do you worry that there's a precedent that's been set?
Well, yes, I do, and if that is a part of the new normal, and this isn't just, like domestic-derived dirt, if I can use that phrase. When a foreign entity does it, particularly a foreign adversary, you've got to wonder what are their ulterior motives. And this may not serve the interests of the candidate that they're supplying dirt to. You never know about these things. That's why it's important to report any such contacts, particularly for adversary sources, to the FBI.
General Clapper, thank you so much.
Thanks, Brianna. Thanks for having me.
Joe Biden.